Konnichiwa! Welcome back to the Retro Game Boy channel. In today's show we're going to be checking out the top 5 most overlooked EA games on the Sega Mega Drive and Sega Genesis. Game on! It's time for another great show of retro gaming. If you're new to the channel, then why not consider subscribing and remember to ring the bell so that you never miss out on your retro gaming goodness. EA is one of the dominant gaming publishers in the world today, and its humble beginnings stretch all the way back to 16-bit consoles. EA's presence on Sega's 16-bit console was huge, with over 150 games published and developed. EA's grip on Sega's most successful console was so great, in fact, that they managed to back-engineer and develop their own gaming cartridges. And whilst EA published and developed multiple genres of games for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis, they were best known for their sporting titles. Outside of their sporting series, they had a number of huge hits, including the Desert Strike series, Zool, James Pond and Road Rash. And whilst EA raked in billions of dollars on some of the biggest IP for the 16-bit era, they did produce a number of titles that went largely overlooked. And we're going to be taking a look at 5 of those titles now. First up, we got General Chaos. A lot of people describe General Chaos as a strategy game, but I rather think of it as a couch PvP brawler with a light sprinkling of strategy over the top. In General Chaos, you actually serve underneath General Chaos, who is in a long-standing battle with General Havoc. Now, you start off the game by choosing your squad of 5, and your squad of 5 come in several presets, and these are a mixture of ranged abilities and CQC. There's even an option to choose a 2-man squad, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Once you've chosen your squad, it's straight onto the battlefield, and whilst at first it looks like you have direct control over the individual characters, what you have in fact is a mouse pointer. Now, the way that you control your characters in General Chaos is that you select a character and then you'll use your mouse pointer to move that character around, essentially positioning them tactically on the map. Now, I say tactically because it's more chaotic, because the battle carries out in real time. And so what you end up doing is frantically clicking the mouse around the gaming board, trying to position your characters and get around the back of the enemy. Now, there is an option where you can have direct control of your characters, making the game way easier, but there's a sacrifice. Remember I spoke about choosing your squads and preset loadouts? Well, you can choose a loadout that has 2 characters in it, a ranged character and a CQC character. Now, you have direct control. You can use the controller to move your characters around the screen without using the mouse pointer, but you are limited to 2, which is actually a pretty cool way of balancing out the game. Now, the game is a ton of fun. It's super chaotic, just like the name implies, madly clicking around the map, hoping that your characters are going to be in a position where you can take them out. It's largely up to luck sometimes. For instance, if you get into a CQC battle, then all the action freezes on the map, except for the 2 characters that are duking it out. Now, you may end up winning the punch out and knocking the enemy down, but there's a random chance that they'll pull out a gun and just shoot you dead. God, that's infuriating. Despite these random frustrations, General Chaos is definitely worth picking up. Risky Woods is a 2D speedrunner platform game. In Risky Woods, you play as Rohan. Our hero has been sent on a quest to save the monks that protect the wisdom of the Lost Lands from their frozen prison. For the most part, Risky Woods is your standard 2D platformer. Our hero is equipped with throwing knives with which he can dispatch enemies, and he can navigate his environment by jumping across a number of platforms. However, there are 2 mechanics in Risky Woods that really switch up the gameplay. The first is time. Now, each level has a set amount of time that you need to complete it in, and there are a number of pickups that you can get that help you achieve the level in the time. There are also a number of pickups that will slow you down. Ones will make you fall asleep, while others will take you to a previous point in the level. There are even a number of puzzles in the level that will prevent you from progressing or slow down your progress unless you can solve them fast enough. The second interesting feature in this game is your ability to upgrade. Every time you kill a monster, a coin is dropped, and when that coin's dropped, you get the opportunity to pick it up by pressing down. Collect enough of these coins and you'll get silver armor. Collect even more and you'll get gold. But every single time you get hit, you'll downgrade your armor. And so you end up with this interesting gaming mechanic where your attention is split between enemies and the coins that they drop. Pick up enough gold coins and you'll soon have gold armor. But if you're not paying attention, you can just as quickly use it. Needless to say, if you can hold on to that gold armor, then the game becomes pretty easy. Risky Woods is a decent enough platformer with some really interesting mechanics, and might be worth picking up and having a play. Next up, we got Naughty Dog's Rings of Power. Now, Rings of Power was actually Naughty Dog's first console game, and the only Naughty Dog game that EA published. It's also the biggest open world RPG on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. Now, one of the first things you're going to want to do with this game when you start it up is open up the box, take out the instruction manual and have a good read, because this game is big. And if you don't, then you're probably going to end up like me, being killed by the barmaid within the first 5 minutes. Now, Rings of Power has a decent enough story, but the TLDR here is you've got to go on a quest, find the Rings of Power, reform them into a magical staff, and vanquish evil. Now, be under no illusion, this game is hard. And I mean really hard. Core gameplay here sees you wandering about a beautifully realised isometric map in third person. As our wizarding hero, it's your job to go off and find quests from people around the world. Now, there are main quests and there are sub-quests. And completing quests rewards you with loot. Loot that you can then go off and buy resources with. Resources that you need to complete more quests. Now, navigating the world in Rings of Power can be a little clunky. It sometimes feels like there's an inbuilt lag into the control. Press the control pad forward and then a few milliseconds the player will actually move forward. One too many times I've pushed forward and then pushed it again thinking that it hasn't registered the input and actually moved on a couple of squares and a couple of screens more than I needed to. Rings of Power is a great RPG where you get to ride dragons, sail on boats, discover islands and take on some fantastic quests. But this game is definitely only for hardcore RPG fans. Might and Magic is another RPG, and it really does feel like this game was an early predecessor to the Oblivion and Skyrim series. Now, Might and Magic is a stats-heavy RPG game. You even use a dice mechanic to resolve combat and to choose your character class stats. Now, whilst the game does have overworld and dungeon exploration, you'll spend a lot of time in combat. And you'll spend a lot of time in combat with a ton of stat screen. Now, outside of the overworld, dungeons and combat, you'll be spending your times in towns, talking and trading with merchants. And unlike Rings of Power, which is a third-person isometric world, Might and Magic is actually a first-person RPG. Now, if you're a Dungeons & Dragons board game fan, then you will absolutely love Might and Magic. But just make sure you turn down the volume, because the audio is super repetitive and freaking annoying. Now, the last of the 5 overlooked EA games on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis is Starflight, and it's probably one of the best games on the system. Now, I don't know how to really describe Starflight. It's kind of like Star Trek meets No Man's Sky. Now, in Starflight, you'd play the role of the captain who has just taken on command of a brand new ship and crew. It's your mission to go out and explore the galaxy for the last remnants of human civilization. And while you're there, you need to solve the mystery as to why all the suns in the galaxy are simultaneously flaring up. Now, the galaxy you have to explore is huge. 270 star systems, all of them with a ton of planets. There are also 8 races for you to meet, interact and trade with, and some of these races even join your crew. Now when you start your adventure, you're going to have to get yourself a captain's logbook, and I mean a literal captain's logbook. There are so many things to discover here, so many secrets to find, that you're going to need to write these down. Now gameplay consists of you piloting your ship around the solar system, discovering planets, landing on those planets, and then venturing out looking for resources. The natural resources can be mined and sold for money, and you'll need money to upgrade your crew, your ship, and to buy that all-important fuel for your ship. You can also use money to colonize entire planets. This game is huge and so detailed. There are so many space anomalies to discover, ancient ruins to come across, and alien species to meet. And there is a great storyline that follows you through your exploration of space. Now Starflight is a must-buy game. It's one of the biggest, most detailed, interesting games that you can find on the Sega Genesis and Sega Mega Drive. EA have the single largest collection of games on the Sega Mega Drive and Sega Genesis. And so whilst these are my 5 games that I think I've overlooked, there are a ton of others. Now as a games collector, I generally only collect games that I loved or games that I think I'm going to like. But with the EA games being so varied, so many different EA games out there, I've decided to collect the entire UK Mega Drive EA collection over the next year. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite EA game on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis was, and if there's anything you think I should pick up first. That's it for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below if you have, or give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. As always, if you haven't subscribed yet, you can do by clicking on my little pixel head below. And if you're a massive retro gaming fan, you may want to check out the 2 videos that I've got over here.